In this video, I'm going to be talking about picking the right tool for the job. And in my case, it's picking between the Sony FX6 and the Sony a7S III. Here's the story. Right now, I'm very fortunate to have the Sony FX6 and the Sony a7S III as my main video cameras. When you write down the capabilities of both these cameras on a piece of paper, you can see that they do line up quite a bit, and they do produce amazing images. But there are a couple of features that really do separate them apart. As we know, there is no perfect camera, and every camera has their pros and cons. For all my client work, there are always two bags that I take to set. My A camera bag, which currently has the Sony FX6 in it, and my backpack, which has the a7S III and all my lenses in it. These two bags go to every single client shoot that I have, and the main reason is for flexibility. I don't want to arrive to set and be limited by using only one camera or one lens. So having all my gear in two convenient bags is really helpful for my process. That way, when I arrive to set, I've got the flexibility to choose between the FX6 and the a7S III. So why would I use the FX6 over the a7S III? Well, for one, the FX6 is my A camera and is the default camera that I always go to record the majority of my projects. For me, when doing paid client work, I want to be using a video camera the majority of the time instead of using a camera that looks like a photography camera. Yes, I do understand that this does sound kind of shallow and shouldn't really be a big deal, but when you're producing videos for paid client work, it does give them a bit more confidence when they see you using a video camera as opposed to a photography camera. And one thing I've learned is that trust is a big thing on set. The FX6 is great for getting interviews and pieces to camera, but where it really shines is when you take the camera outside and use the variable ND. And that is one of the reasons that I'll go and use the Sony FX6 over the a7S III is because of that internal variable ND. And I'm sure if you've been doing research on the Sony FX6 or you've been able to use one of these cameras and you've used the internal variable ND, you will know how valuable it is and how easy it is to get the shots that you need first take. And not have to worry about changing of exposure, changing of a manual variable ND. It just makes the process so much easier and not needing to worry about your exposure. The FX6 also has built-in XLR inputs as well. So if you're wanting to plug in one of your XLR microphones, you can do that directly into the FX6 by the XLR adapter that's on the top handle. So that is one of the catches. You need to have the top handle on the FX6 in order to get that audio. This is a well-documented annoyance that some FX6 users have voiced, but for me, it doesn't really bother me. I like the handle and the XLR inputs are always there if I need them. With that said, I do normally use an external audio recorder in my own audio bag, so this isn't really a big concern for me. And then if I want to do handheld shots, I'll typically use the Sony 24-105 f4 lens that has optical steady shot in it, so I don't need to worry about micro jitters and I can typically get some nice smooth shots. I also have the Sony 70-200 f4 OSS lens as well, and if I'm going handheld, I'll occasionally use the Cine Saddle just to make sure that I've got that steady shot. So the FX6 pretty much does everything that I can throw at it, so why would I need the a7S III? Well, let's talk about that now. The main reason that I would pick the Sony a7S III over the FX6 is possibly because of the way it looks and the size of it. If I'm out in public or I'm filming an event and I want to be as discreet as possible, then using the a7S III is a better option than using the big FX6 because that draws more attention to yourself. Something to keep in mind is that when you're filming people and if you've got a big video camera like the FX6 with a monitor on it and it's all rigged out, and people see you out the corner of their eye, they know that they're being filmed and they'll start acting unnatural, and that's not really what you want. Whereas if they see you with a camera like this, they might think you're just getting photos and then they'll start acting a little bit more natural and not think that you're taking video. And of course, we do know that video and photo are different. Photos, you're capturing that still moment, whereas video, you're capturing an extended period of time. And sometimes when you're capturing video, it's a bit harder to get that extended period of time of usable video as opposed to that instant that you get with photos. So having a camera that isn't so distracting to the people that you might be filming is a really helpful tip to get more useful shots. And although the Sony FX6 has a built-in variable ND, it doesn't have IBIS or in-body image stabilization, whereas the Sony a7S III does. And this is really helpful if you're using prime lenses that don't have any optical steady shot built into the lens. It gets rid of any of those micro jitters and helps you have more smooth looking footage if you're going handheld. And I do like to have the option of going handheld as much as possible. It's also a lot easier to strip this down because this is pretty much what I have when I go out on shoots. I don't have a big monitor attached to it or anything like that. and it makes it a lot easier to put it onto a gimbal. Whereas my Sony FX6 has a monitor on it, it has a side handle, a top handle, and it just takes a lot of time to strip it all down and then put it on a gimbal. Yes, you can use the FX6 on a gimbal, but having this camera handy and available just to put onto a gimbal is really fast and efficient. Also, for shoots that require photo and video, obviously I'd go with the A7S III over the FX6. Some people don't like that the A7S III only shoots 12 megapixels, but for me 12 megapixels is enough for the client work that I do. Most of the photos go to social media or their website, and I don't need to have that large megapixel count to be able to do that. But with that said, I do try my best not to get booked for gigs that require photo and video. I do market myself as a video production person and not a photographer. So if the client needs just a few photos here and there, that's fine. However, if a client is wanting event coverage and needs both photos and videos of the entire event, I'd suggest to them that they hire me for video and then get someone else for photos. That way I can focus solely on video and the other person can focus solely on photos. And I find that's the best way to get the best results. And finally, I would reach for the A7S III for filming videos like this YouTube video. Right now I'm recording with the Sony FX6 so I can use the A7S III as a prop, but the majority of these talking head videos that I've been doing on my channel have been shot with the Sony A7S III. And the reason that I use the Sony A7S III is because it's just a smaller camera that sits on the tripod and it does the job. And recently, due to current world events, it's just been living on this tripod here, and that makes it really convenient for me to just get into the studio, turn the camera on, and hit record and start making these videos. And the Sony FX6 sits in its bag waiting for the next gig. And also, there are some shoots where I do reach for both cameras, and that's when I'm doing a 2-camera setup. Recently, I recorded a primary school performance, and I used both these cameras to capture it. I had them both on tripods, and the A7S was my master wide shot, recording in 4K. I had the FX6 on a tripod, and that was my close-up shot, and I was using the Sony 70-200 f4, and I was also recording in 1080 with the Super 35 mode, so I could get a little bit extra reach on that 200mm lens. This was really helpful to get some tighter shots, and because the final deliverable was a 1080 file, I was able to use the 1080 Super 35 mode without losing any quality. Both cameras were shooting S-Cinetone, and unfortunately I can't show you any of the shots because it's a school performance, but overall I was really happy with how these two cameras lined up and worked together for this shoot. And that's the video. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a like, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this channel for more videos on video creation in the future.